Good evening, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Bhakti Community. I'm Jem, and I'm very happy to welcome you all today at Bhakti On. Tonight's talk is titled The Untold You. Before the world told your story, who were you? It's in a world that's always shifting. This session helps us pause and remember the changeless self. And for that, I'm very honored to be welcoming Bhagwat Ashraya. He has been practicing Bhakti Yoga for more than 50 years, and he lives with his wife, Sarvamangala, in Australia, where they help communities in Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. And they also travel across the world in London, US, India, and they inspire communities through their teachings, counseling, and beautiful kirtans. They are a living example of steady devotion, service, and joy in the path of bhakti. So I'm super delighted to be welcoming Bhagavad Ashraya in for tonight's talk. Welcome, Bhagavad Ashraya. I know you're trying to set up your camera. I think you're trying to go landscape. It may be okay to just stay portrait. Yeah, this is good. I can just unmute. I think you still need to unmute, I believe.
There we are.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
How many people are with us?
We people are still dialing in. I think people are still joining. So we have around 10 members now, but people are still dialing in. But we can get started.
We get started.
Yes.
Can I see people?
Yes, you should. On the phone, it might be difficult, but yeah. But we do have, I can just welcome. We have Premanishta, we have Saitu, we have Gauri, Vicky, we have Sakala Subhag, Chow is here. We also have Shyama Sundari and Bhakti Rasa and Va. So these are the members who have joined tonight.
Okay. Well, the untold you, the untold story of you. Actually, I have to begin by complimenting you, Jai Madhava, to very quickly put this concept together. We talked for just a few minutes this afternoon, and you came up with a beautiful title and a beautiful subtext to it. So I'm very happy to have this entry into this Bhakti community online.
Thank you.
The question is identity. What is my identity? Who am I? And if we look at our situation that we're in now, we have an identity based upon the associations that we have, the relationships that we have. So we consider ourselves to be the son or daughter of a particular couple, member of a wider family with cousins and so on. And then we have the identity of being a member of a community and a citizen of a particular nation. And these are all designated identities because as Jai Madhava did in the preamble to this, who was I before I was given this identity? I did exist before then. Of course, a lot of people will question that idea. So I thought one thing to kick this program off with would be a very quick little meditation, or not necessarily a meditation, an observation. Let's go through a process of observation. If we all just relax, just close your eyes and just listen to what's happening around you. There's a whole world around us, but of course, just the mere vicinity of things. There's noises come to us, maybe traffic noises. I can hear a refrigerator in the background. I can hear the air conditioning working in this building and so on. So just observe that for another few minutes, few seconds rather. This is not going to take long. But then just relax. Take a big breath and relax. And shift your attention to your body. And then same thing, observe what's happening in your body. Do you have a little bit of ache or pain somewhere? Something is itching, you maybe feel you need to stretch, or you feel hungry, or so on. Just observe that for a minute or two. And then, again, just relax, shift your attention, take a deep breath, and just shift your attention on what's going through your mind, what you're thinking about, or what you've been thinking about in the last hour or two, or during the day. And then just relax and let it all go, and we'll carry on. And the simple reason that I did that, and it's very simple, very easy. We observed what was going on around us. We observed what was going on in our body, and we observed what was going on in our minds. So the thing that makes very obvious is that I am the observer of these things. I'm the observer of what's going on around me. I'm the observer of what's going on in my body, and I'm the observer of what's going through my mind. And the simple fact is that the observer is not the observed. What I observe is not me. So I've observed the situation around me, I've observed my body, and I've observed my mind. So that automatically points to the fact that I am something other than these things. And in delving into this idea of our untold story, we can open up the possibility of there being a metaphysical existence. Metaphysical's not a word that's just there in the language by chance. There's always been the concept that there is something meta, something above the purely physical. The physical in the subtle sense and the physical in the gross sense. So in this regard, then, we need to consider that there is a metaphysical identity. The identity that we have at the moment is in relationship to the body. As I said, we've taken birth in a particular situation, and on the basis of that, we've been given an identity. And indeed, we identify ourselves as that identity. So from a philosophical point of view, we can look at what Krishna says in his initial presentation to Arjuna in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, from verse 11 to verse 30. And in verse 12, he makes the proposition to Arjuna: never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So immediately he's positing that if we want to consider identity, we have to consider that there is a metaphysical self, there is a metaphysical identity which is above the situation that we are in now, which is a temporary one. This body, and Krishna presents another proposition immediately in the next verse, where he says, as the embodied being continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. This word soul is a compromise that Srila Prabhupada had to use in the presentation of Bhagavad Gita as it is at the time that he came to America in the mid-60s, because he's not really here to present the idea of us having a soul. He's here to, but people don't understand the concept of deha and dehi as it's presented in this verse by Krishna. Dehi no shmin yata dehe. So the deha in Sanskrit is the body, and the dehino, the dehina, is the embodied person. In other words, the dehi, the person in the body, the living being in the body, not the body, or not the soul in the sense of I have a soul. That was actually a concept that I grew up with, that a soul is something you have. But that really doesn't settle the issue of then, well, who or what am I? And Krishna settles this in this presentation, that we are individual living entities who are living temporarily in these physical bodies, but our constitutional nature is that we're eternal beings. And as this verse explains, we're just passing through. We're passing through this lifetime, and the idea that is then presented is that there's a process that we are involved in, whereby we take birth, we live a life, and we die, and we leave that body that we took birth in, and we move on to another body after death. So the identity that we carry within any given body, in any given lifetime, on the material plane, is a temporary designation. It's not a permanent identity. What Krishna is pointing to as a philosophy of life that you have a little experience of right here in this exercise that we did. You exist other than what you observe. You are an entity existing and observing things in this world. So that at least posits the idea that you're something other than a material entity. Of course, there's philosophy in the world now that consciousness is just another element of matter, and that as matter has somehow or another evolved in form, consciousness is an element that is a part of that evolution. But just like all of the other elements dissipate into the world around us when the body is finished, consciousness does also. But the difficulty that presents philosophically is that we have no identity at all, that we actually don't exist. We are just a combination of elements that's come into existence for some time, and then it dissolves away as if it never were. And the concept of consciousness has no concept within it of personhood. This idea of personhood is presented in this paradigm as just some kind of phenomenon of consciousness, but it has no reality and it has no endurance. So what Krishna is proposing in his philosophy is that we begin with the understanding that the conscious living entity has always existed. And he makes the point that he has an eternal existence, that Arjuna has an eternal existence, all of the kings that are present, they have an eternal existence, and by implication, all living beings have an eternal existence. And now, how do we go with this, JM? Do we now open it up for reflections and discussion or questions? Because I think
Sure, we can.
that's a good little preamble to what we're talking about today.
Definitely. We can open it up for anyone who share any reflection thoughts that came about on what you heard so far, or any questions. Please feel free to unmute and share, or you can type in chat box. I can read it out. Or if you're here for the first time, please feel free to say hi. We'd love to hear from you too, or coming back after a long time.
Do we have some first-time people here today?
I'm just checking. I think most of them are returnees, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it looks like most of them are returnees. But some of them are after a long time. So yeah, I would love to hear from them.
Okay. Are there any questions or any comments?
Vicky and Pramisha's hands are up. Go ahead, Vicky.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I really like the point so far that we have identity based on associations. It puts us back in the driver's seat that we can choose our associations and align our free will in that way. And I also wanted to welcome back Melissa. She joined our retreat in mid-September, and she's also been to one of these meetings before, I think. Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but welcome back.
That's correct, Vicky. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be joining once again.
There's a question from somebody. Who was that?
Yeah, welcome back, Melissa. Glad to have you. And we have Kurt, who has a question. And thanks, Vicky, for introducing. Before I go, Prime Minister, you had your hand up. Why don't you go first before I take up Kurt's question?
Sure. I just wanted to say that one point which really got stuck to me was when you said that we say my soul, whereas it's like, the soul is the main thing, and so they're saying my body. And I was thinking that when people go with this my soul, my body, then do they ever think that who is this me, or who is saying that my body, my soul? So I really like that you brought up that point. So thank you for sharing it.
Thank you. That was a very powerful point of realization for me when I first was reading Bhagavad Gita as it is, because it was very much a conditioned state of mind for me to think I had a soul. But then when you think about it, I also have a refrigerator, but I'm not my refrigerator. Or I have a car. I claim possession of so many things, but I'm not the things that I possess. So it was a really stark realization when I just understood Krishna's not talking about that. He's making this very clear proposition that you are an eternal living being. That's what you are. You are the soul. It's not something that you have, it's what you are. And that actually, if you think about that, embracing that concept has very profound implications, because if you think about identity, like Vicky was saying, identity in terms of association, then what is your eternal identity? What is your eternal association that gives you the identity that you have in eternity? Or how do we again come to an understanding of what that is? That's something that I think is presented by implication right in front of us there. Okay, if you accept that you are an eternal being, and that A, you've never been born, and B, you will never die, then you must have an identity beyond the temporary identity that you carry now, because that identity will cease to exist, because it's based upon the body, the material body, which is a temporary thing. There was a time when this body didn't exist, and there's a time in the future when this body will cease to exist. And if you think about it, accepting that, well, this is me, is really not a satisfactory thing. And it just makes life seem ridiculous, because we understand that the world has existed for billions and billions of years. And we have the understanding that it will go on existing for billions of years after we vanish. But at some point, we apparently have come into existence as a result of conception. And we will cease to exist at some point in the future as a result of what we call death. So that's a very short amount of time. And before it, there was an unlimited, inconceivable amount of time. And after it, there will also be that. And we just exist like a little blip, and we're gone. And so then what's the point of our existence? And this is where we get existential philosophy, that, well, actually, it's all futile. It's some kind of cosmic joke that this life exists. And that's not satisfactory. That's actually not satisfactory. It was never satisfactory to me. I couldn't accept that. That my existence actually has no purpose whatsoever. Because it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. That why is that all? There's no purpose to my existence. It's futile. So what does it matter about morality and law and social structure? What's the point of all of this if it's just this stupid progression from birth to death? And all that you strive for in life is about making a good life, having a good life in the future. You go to school so that you can graduate through different levels of knowledge that will equip you to go into the world and earn a living, so that you can acquire all the so-called good things in life, a good home, have a nice family, and enjoy life. But then at some time in that future that you're working so hard to get these things in, you're going to die. And you have no inkling when or where or how that will happen. But we all know, as sure as death, as they say, death and taxes, as sure as death. So inevitably, death will come. And if death is the end of everything, that's just ridiculous. It makes a farce out of all the endeavor that we put in to having a good life. But of course, there are those, and there always have been those, who take the philosophical position that, well, that's just the way it is. Get over it. Just do your best. Have a good life. And what else can you do? But that does not, and a lot of people just get on with life like that. But we're not here because we accept that. We're here because we want to find out, is that the reality? Is that all there is? And then that's the point about searching in the world of metaphysical, philosophical understanding. And in my own experience, the philosophy of life that Krishna presents, beginning with this understanding that we are eternal living beings, is the most satisfactory and most complete philosophy of life that I've ever come across. And by taking to the life path that Krishna outlines in the Bhagavad Gita, I find myself to be completely satisfied mentally, intellectually, physically, emotionally, socially. There's satisfaction in the pursuit of this philosophy, beginning with this principle. I am an eternal living being, and Krishna is an eternal living being. And as we read further in Bhagavad Gita, we come to understand that amongst all living beings, he is the supremely conscious living being. He is the supreme conscious source of everything. Everything that exists is a manifestation of his infinite energies. You and I have all kinds of energies to a limited degree, but the understanding that develops as we become more aware of our relationship with Krishna in this metaphysical realm of existence is that Krishna has the right to say, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, because he never falls into the illusion of thinking that he is a manifestation of matter. Matter, as we understand, is an energy, variegated energy. So many, like if you look at the, what do they call it? The periodic table. So many energies, so many vibrational conditions of different forms of matter, sodium, phosphorus, calcium, nitrogen, all of these different energies that manifest themselves in different ways. They must have an energetic source. And the philosophy that Krishna presents very clearly addresses the question, what is the causeless cause of all causes? This is a big question in philosophy. Why does anything exist? And how does it come into existence? Or does it just come as a result of the interaction of material elements? If you take that position, you still have the idea that there's a causeless cause of all causes, and that is matter. Because a materialistic person will say, well, everything comes from matter. And so in answer to the question, where does matter come from? Then a materialistic person will say, there's nothing else but matter. That's all right. But what about the metaphysical? Is that another level of material existence? Is it just matter? The abstract things like emotions, feelings, the ability to think, the sense of personhood, the sense of individual existence. Is this all just brought about by some combination of matter? Or is there some higher realm of existence? Some realm of existence that we actually belong to? Because when you think about it, if you accept this idea that I'm a metaphysical entity, I'm not a physical entity, I'm not a product of matter, and I exist eternally. So I existed before I took birth in this body, and I'll exist after this body is gone. or becomes what we'd say invalid. It's very interesting, isn't it? The word invalid and the word invalid spelled exactly the same way, but with a certain inflection, you get a different meaning. But when this body becomes a situation in which we cannot live anymore because it doesn't function properly, it breaks down, it becomes decrepit, it doesn't work properly anymore, and eventually it stops working, and we leave this body. So if you, just for argument's sake, accept the proposition that, well, yes, I am an eternal entity who is temporarily living in this situation, then a reasonable conclusion to draw from that is that I don't need a material body to be alive. In other words, I am animating this body. There's one French philosopher, I never remember his name, but he made the statement, we are not human beings undergoing a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings undergoing a human experience. So it becomes quite compelling after a while to take this on board, because it's not just wishful thinking. We've already, that's why I do that little exercise at the beginning of these discussions, because it's very easy to see that we are the observers of the world around us. We are observers of the sensations and feelings of our body, and we are the observers of the thoughts and feelings that pass through our mind. So we are a fourth entity. We're not the world around us. We're not the body, and we're not the mind. We are another entity observing all these things. And the question that you have to ask then is, well, what am I? Who am I? And above and beyond that is, if I have a permanent existence, then what is the purpose of my existence? What is the purpose? Why do I exist? Why do I exist? So if you work back from that in a logical sense and analyze, well, why do I live my life? What is it that I want? And it's not very difficult to come to the conclusion that I want to live to be in loving relationships. I have the propensity to love, and I want to give that love, and I want to be loved, and I want to be happy. And it's very simple then to make the step and ask the question, well, how much love do you want? And how long do you want that to last for? Same thing with happiness. How much happiness do you want? And how long do you want that happiness to last? And without thinking, the answer is forever. And forevermore, and without any reduction, just ever increasing love and happiness. And then it becomes very quickly apparent to us that, well, if that's what I want, I'm not going to find it in this realm. I'm not going to find it on this platform of existence, because everything here is temporary. For the first part, everything is temporary. And all of the interactions and entanglements of this life ultimately lead to a state of unhappiness. Because even even if I'm in a loving relationship for the whole of my life, then at some point, as I was saying before, I'm going to die, or the person that I love is going to die, and that situation is broken, and that brings unhappiness. So the more one contemplates these propositions, the more interesting what Krishna has to say becomes. And then when we begin to get the idea that Krishna is above all of this in his consciousness, he's the original conscious source of everything. And all that exists depends upon him. He's the causeless cause of everything. That makes sense in that if you go from the materialistic position of the causeless cause of all causes simply being matter, that doesn't sufficiently answer where do I come from? I as a conscious being, what combination of chemicals has brought my consciousness into existence? And the impersonalist scientist, what do they call it? Scientism response to that, well, it's just a phenomenon that arises because of consciousness being an implicit part of the chemical and physical combination of elements that's brought you into existence. But you don't really exist because at a certain point, all of the elements that have brought you into existence will dissipate, including the element called consciousness. But a very reasonable answer to that question is, if I don't exist, then who is it that is living my life? Because I know I exist. And any intelligent person will accept that. Everyone knows they exist and that they have desires. Where does desire come from in terms of chemical interaction or physiological interaction? How does desire arise? How does desire arise? And you cannot be free from desire. Wanting to be free from desire is a desire. So there's no way around this. That I'm conscious, I have desires, and they boil down to a few simple things. And those few simple things that I want them to be permanent. I do not want to be in an impermanent situation. So where does that desire come from? Is that some kind of electronic or computerized glitch in the programming that has, through evolution, has brought us to this stage? I don't think so. I can't accept that. Whereas when I think of the idea, or I contemplate the idea that I'm conscious, I'm a person, I have a form, I have a personality, I have desires, I'm active. That's the other point about I'm not just the observer of the situation I'm in, I'm active in this situation. That's one very distinct difference between a dead body and a living body. There is no activity. There's no manifestation of desire. There's no manifestation of consciousness in dead matter. So food for thought arises very quickly if you contemplate these proposals that Krishna's making, that there is a metaphysical existence. We are part and parcel of that metaphysical existence. And by a process of re-establishing, as Krishna explains, re-establishing a relationship with him that it exists eternally, but which we've forgotten due to our long association with temporary existence in the material world. Then that becomes more compelling. The idea that there is a platform of existence that I come from and which I can go back to and which I have become forgetful of due to my long association with this material world. How are we doing for time, JM?
Yeah, we do have another 20 minutes, but it's a good time to just pause and maybe ask for some reflections or questions or any comments that anyone might have. Please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask questions or share thoughts, reflections over chat. I'd love to hear from you.
I noticed somebody left earlier.
Yeah, the Saitu, I think. Saitu is asking a question. Is there a way to see and feel the soul?
Well, that is the proposition of the process of Bhakti Yoga. Can I quote Krishna again?
Yeah.
His philosophy is, at a certain point in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that this knowledge gives direct perception of the self by realization. This cultivation of this knowledge in practice in one's life brings one to a point where one becomes able to perceive what is presently beyond the realm of our sense perception, with the understanding that sense perception can be expanded or reduced. Just like there are animals that have certain senses that are very much heightened above ours, like a vulture is like 2 miles up in the sky and can see a dead body on the ground. You know, when we're up in an airplane, you can't see anything on the ground. You can just see the ground. So sense perception, or another simple example is a dog. You blow a dog whistle, nobody in the room hears it, but the dog hears it. Ultrasound. Ultra means beyond our present realm of hearing, a dog can hear something. So the idea is there that consciousness can be expanded or reduced. And under the modalities of matter, goodness, passion, and ignorance, that's what happens. In ignorance, the ability to consciously perceive things reduces, and as one becomes situated in the mode of goodness, the ability of the consciousness to perceive things expands. So then, what Krishna is presenting is the idea of the metaphysical, getting one's consciousness onto the metaphysical level, through the practice of bhakti, then one's consciousness expands to the point where one can perceive things that one cannot perceive while under the modes of material nature. So yes, you can feel the soul, and you can hear about the soul and cultivate a consciousness of the soul before you see. But then again, actually, seeing is an interesting word, because when you analyze it, you see through all your senses. Like if somebody's explaining something to you, you say, "Oh yes, I see what you're saying." Well, what are you seeing with? You're not seeing with your eyes, you're seeing with your intelligence. Same thing applies to all your other senses. Let me see what that tastes like. Let me see what that feels like. Let me go and see what that musician sounds like. So the idea of seeing is not just limited to the eye. And feeling is a way of seeing, also feeling the presence of the soul is possible. Feeling your own presence as an entity, you've already done that tonight. You've felt yourself to be the entity who is observing the things around you. So you're feeling yourself. You're feeling yourself. And you are a soul. So yes, you can feel the presence of the soul. You don't necessarily see literally the soul straight away, but that comes also. But it's a process of education and actually a process of evolution to evolve your consciousness away from a state of ignorance into a state of knowledge. That's what education is actually all about. Eduke means to lead out of ignorance into knowledge. So the process of bhakti leads us out of ignorance of all things metaphysical into an awareness of all things metaphysical, and not just an awareness in a chaotic sense, but in a very orderly understanding of things as they are.
Maxine has a question which is related. What are some ways that we can remember and realize that we are not the body?
What are some of the ways that we can say that again? I'm sorry. We can what?
What are some ways that we can remember and realize that we are not the body?
Well, by regularly practicing the kind of logical process that we've been discussing tonight, spending time contemplating this and hearing it regularly, so that the concept, first of all, becomes very clear that yes, I am the observer. I am separate from what I'm observing, and therefore I exist separately from everything around me. I exist as an entity that is not the mind, not the body, and not the world around me. And take on board the concept that that is the soul, that is me. Or as Krishna says, the Dehi, I am the living entity who lives within this body. And that it is a question of shifting my consciousness, shifting the focus of my consciousness by practice over time to act in a way which takes me out of the bodily concept of myself. So that brings us into the following of practices and principles. We're aware of the principles we practice in bhakti, the regulative principles that we practice, JM. Our devotees are aware of these things.
Yeah, we have gone through a few concepts in the past. Yeah.
Well, the idea of all of those concepts, those regulative principles, the concept behind all of those things is that by engagement in these activities, we strengthen the conception within our minds that we are these bodies. So, first of all, it's best to engage in activities which give us a clearer sense that we are not this body, that we are a separate entity, and that there are certain tastes that we are not experiencing on the platform of the bodily conception. There's not a level of satisfaction from these things. But by engaging in activities of bhakti yoga, we develop a taste for food, for association, for knowledge, that is centered on this higher platform of existence. It's not centered upon trying to draw pleasure from the lower platform. There's a verse that Krishna says where he says that although we may be restricted from sense enjoyment in this world, and we're all actually restricted in sense enjoyment because there's all kinds of things that we want that we can't afford to get. So that's a restriction. So whether we're voluntarily restricting the activities of our senses or whether we're forced to be restricted, it doesn't mean the taste for enjoying things in the material world just disappears. But Krishna explains that ceasing engagements in the lower sensory activities by experiencing a higher taste, something that satisfies our mind and senses on a higher level of engagement, then we become fixed in consciousness. That's a practice. It's a practice. But we could go into more detail at another time, but we don't have time tonight.
Yeah, Bhaktirasa also had a reflection along with that. Bhaktirasa, do you want to say that or do you want to read it out?
I was writing that ever since I was young, it's almost like being in a movie. It's like having this sense of not being part of this world or this body, and I'm observing everything around me, even as a child. But not being a part of it, if you will. And I've also been able to understand the journey I've had through my life as spiritual, ultimately coming to the path of bhakti. And I have recognized that bhakti is the absolute truth that makes me feel complete. So that's where I've come, and I realize when he says coming back to the Supreme Godhead, coming home, that's how I feel. This is it. I'll never know because I'm not the cause of all causes, obviously, but I feel that this may be my last cycle because this is where I was meant to come, where I was meant to be, the education that I'm meant to have, and understanding now where I've come from. I know that that's where I'm headed back, and so there's no questions for me.
No doubt.
Yeah, no doubt. Exactly.
No doubt. Yes. It's like because this is the beauty of this philosophy, is that it's not just discussing different concepts, it's experiencing something. And experience is something that can't be taken away from you. Somebody might try to gaslight you into thinking that, well, you're just imagining this. But there's a very simple example about experience that makes this experience of Krishna consciousness very true. And that is, when you sit down to eat a meal, you are getting sustenance, your hunger is being satisfied, and you're enjoying the taste of what you're eating. And you don't need anyone to tell you that. You experience it. So the awakening of devotion, direct experience of Krishna's presence in your life, and a fading interest in anything else happens simultaneously when you enter into this experience. Kurt asked the question, what if it is a delusion?
Yeah, Kurt's question is, what if it's a delusion? Don't people feast on delusion all the time?
What if it is a delusion? Then what?
Don't people feast on delusions all the time?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't get, what was the second part? Don't people
Feast on delusions. Don't people just live on delusions all the time? Feast on
Well,
delusion.
let's say that's the truth, that people just live in a deluded state all the time. And there's a range of deluded conditions that you can be in. I'll take this one. If the reality of life is that we're all just in one kind of delusion or another, then I'll take this one. I'm happy with this. I'm satisfied.
Kurt, does that answer your question? Or do you have
Kurt,
follow-up?
does that answer your question?
Hello, how's it going? Yeah, I mean, that's a choice, you're making. You're basically making a bet. It all comes down to, are you willing to make this bet? And unfortunately, I can't, even though I interface with this kind of knowledge all the time. I'll even write books about it, like as a novelist. So it's a great concept to play with. Do I know? I don't know. This is true. That's the issue. We don't actually know. It's faith. And people blow themselves up, do horrible things that you happen to me because of bad faith. Anybody can make a mistake for any reason, but
When you say we all just do this on faith, that's like saying nobody knows who the supreme being is, or if there is a supreme being. Yes?
correct.
Well, have you asked everybody?
No.
Well, then how can you say that? How can you say we? You can only talk in subjective terms.
I mean, yes, technically, I don't know if somebody has proof that there is God, but I mean, what the criteria for that? I mean, it hasn't been presented to us. So at face value, it's safe to make a guess. Considering how many people try to prove God, you think that the person who actually had the answer, it's not sitting in a cave somewhere, like the ultimate argument. I think is what it's avicena is like proof of the infallible, proof of the infinite. Avicena, the
Well, that's kind of all impersonal conceptions. You can have blind doubt just as much as you can have blind faith. But what we are talking about and what Krishna is presenting, that here's a subjective experience that you can have. It's like conduct an experiment. certain controls of the experiment, certain activities. That's how science works. You have a hypothesis and you set up an experiment. And the first aspect of this experiment is to suspend your disbelief and just accept that Krishna is who he says he is. And that in what he says, he makes it very clear that you have an eternal relationship with him, which at the moment you're in forgetfulness of. But the good news about forgetfulness is that it's predicated on knowledge, and that knowledge can be reawakened through a practice.
I mean, I like this idea a lot. I like the idea of is it purva samskaras? You know, the whole concept of things from past lives that follow us. And but the thing is that knowledge, those conceptions, still this whole situation raises more questions than it answers. Sure, I love all this. It sounds like a beautiful argument. It explains everything. It sounds great, but still, then where did Krishna come from? What is his? It just raises more questions that I didn't have to bring up because I'm sure you're aware of them. Just about each, like our souls, were our souls always having been made, or was there a point when they didn't exist, so forth? Can we merge souls? All that stuff.
Well, that's what I'm saying. At a certain point, you have to enter into an experiment with an open heart and an open mind and accept that Krishna exists and that he is who he says he is, and that what he says about you is true, and what he says about the relationship between you and him is true, and that the process by which that relationship can be reawakened and reestablished is valid, and you take to that practice and see what happens.
I got the beads. It's a chant 108 times.
Do you chant?
No, I tried. I can't get. Never did 108. I'm sure maybe at one point I will. But
Well,
I haven't gotten.
you're a loner. You're a loner.
I hang out at the temple.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
still,
hang out.
hanging out's one thing, but you're a loner in your disposition.
I talk to a lot of people. I'm always reading. Talking to you right now.
Yeah. No, all I'm saying is keep showing up and do something. Take up some practice. Take up some practice.
I do. There's I find the kirtan artists that I like. There's one called Kripa Moya, down in Australia or New Zealand. He's an amazing voice, and I memorized 4 prayers, which is pretty sweet.
You're on the way. You're on the way.
Well, it's got to be good kirtan. I'm kind of like a little picky, I guess. So yeah.
Well, the thing is, you're engaging in a process that Krishna recommends, and we're all individuals. It's like you think about in a garden, all the plants in the garden, they're all in the same earth, but they all grow at different rates and they all come to fruition, all the fruits and flowers and whatever that you're dealing with, or some things bloom in the autumn, some bloom in the winter. Everyone's an individual, and things work differently for different individuals because of so many factors. But the fact of the matter is, you have the good fortune to have come in contact with this, and you're sticking around, which means you're attracted.
I mean, I just hope.
And that attract. Sorry.
Sorry. I mean, it's like you have convictions. That's the thing that's lacking is conviction. Like it's usually some like event. You said earlier that there was like a moment of reckoning when you actually realized this truth. I haven't had that. So.
Do you want it?
Sure. Yeah, just show it to me. I want to. If it's real, I can experience it, and it's like for me. Yeah.
Well, therefore, that's my point. You should just put aside the mind the doubting nature of the mind, suspend any kind of disbelief, and act as if A, Krishna is real, and B, what he says is true, and that if you request him to help you develop a deeper understanding or have a realization of his presence, its personal presence in your life, then he'll reciprocate with you.
You know, I love all that, but I heard that from every single pastor in my life growing up. You know, how could I possibly? I heard that from every single pastor. I'm like drenched in Christianity growing up. Like it's the same message, just with a different skin. Well, obviously, no, it's not the same message by any means.
So
But it's not
that's the principle of bhakti. That's the principle of bhakti. Any bona fide process of self-realization involves this. It's beyond the purview of the mind.
I think we'll have to take a follow-up on this because we are 6 minutes over. I do want to maybe respect
Sorry.
Babu's time,
Hey,
but
yes.
thanks so much, Kurt. It's always you bring up very interesting questions and engaging questions. Thanks for making
Nice to
life
meet
for
you,
us.
Kurt.
Yeah, thanks,
Nice
Kurt, and thanks. Yeah.
to meet you as well. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Sorry we ran late, but thank you so much, Bhagavad Ashya, for coming on Bhakti On today and at a short notice, actually very short notice. Really, you adjusted a few things to come on, so really appreciate and grateful, and for such a deep, enriching, and enlivening talk today. And looking forward to many more in future. So thank you so much, and thanks everyone for staying back a little late today.
Thank you. I hope I haven't offended anyone, and I've really enjoyed being with you all. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
So,
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.